it's my great pleasure to introduce Shawn Colvin and Steve Earle.
How are you? Maybe I'm a little bit lonely. Maybe I'm a little bit blue. Maybe I was out of my mind and you don't know me like you think that you do. Maybe I had it coming. Maybe I wanted it all. Maybe I was already out on the highway, running when I heard you call. You're right, I'm wrong. I knew all along. I'm wrong, you're right. I miss you tonight. What if I killed all that's holy? What if I told you a lie? What if you ended up believing I only ever meant to make you cry? Every man only wants mercy. Every woman only wants hope. And every time I ever did you wrong, you forgave me. And I wondered if I had enough rope. You're right, I'm wrong. I knew all along. I'm wrong, you're right. I miss you tonight. Past the edge of believing, too late for turning back now. I can still hear the door slam when I'm leaving, and I always remember that sound. Don't remember who pulled the lever, don't remember who made the call. But maybe the truth is neither one of us ever loved anybody at all. You're right, I'm wrong. I knew all along. I'm wrong, you're right. I miss you tonight. You're right, I'm wrong. I knew all along. I'm wrong, you're right. I miss you tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
He's trying to find something that's not there.
Hello, is that gonna whistle like that anymore? I hope not. Just turn the monitors off.
Yeah,
Turn them off.
we don't need
Okay.
them.
That's what the problem is. So this record, we wrote 6 songs together, and for this record, and there are 4 covers, and I brought some of them. Shawn brought some of them, and the covers are essentially fantasy camp, just songs that we really wanted to sing. And let's see, let's hope this thing doesn't explode. This instrument, in case you're wondering, it's you can call it an octave mandolin, or you can call it, some people call it a bouzouki. If you're going through security in an airport, I would suggest octave mandolin. You don't want to say bouzouki in an airport. But this is one of the covers, and I think we've both known Anthony DeCurtis a long time, and he specifically asked for this one, so we're going to play it.
She would never say where she came from. Yesterday don't matter if it's gone. While the sun is bright, or in the darkest night, no one knows. She comes and goes. Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday. Who could hang a name on you when you change with every new day? Still, I'm gonna miss you. Don't question why she needs to be so free. She'll tell you it's the only way to be. She just can't be chained to a life where nothing's gained and nothing's lost. It's such a cost. Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday. Who could hang a name on you when you change with every new day? Still, I'm gonna miss you. There's no time to lose, I heard her say. Catch your dreams before they slip away. Dying all the time. Lose your dreams and you will lose your mind. Make life unkind. Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday. Who could hang a name on you when you change with every new day? Still, I'm gonna miss you. Tuesday, who could hang a name on you when you change with every new day? Still, I'm gonna miss you. Thank you.
Thanks. What's up, man? Where am I going?
Where are we sitting? Do we know?
We don't know. Girl in the middle.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
That'll work.
Oh.
Well, you know, I mean, it's always useful as a critic to do things like this because there's a little bit of an aspect of performance to it, and one of the and I always feel like I learn something when I do it. And one of the things I just learned is what it's like to walk on after a performance like that. If you're, you know, if your opening act just blows you away, that was quite extraordinary. That was really, really lovely. Why don't we talk a little bit about? I mean, I'd be interested to hear each of you talk about each other as songwriters. You know, I wonder, Shawn, if you could talk about, you know, Steve as a songwriter and, you know, before maybe you even met him, or what you always felt about his songs, and Steve.
Well, I was introduced to Steve through the song Someday on Guitar Town, but that was the first song I heard. And I was blown away by that tune, and obviously listened to the rest of the record. And I think, and there is such a thing as a Steve Earle song. It sounds like a Steve Earle song, and it hit me right then and there. And you know, I like to say, and I don't know what Steve thinks of this, that his stuff is deceptively simple. It's not simple, but he can say things that nobody else could get away with that are I don't know, what do you say? Fear not the obvious. And he makes that work in an incredible way.
Steve, I wonder, could you say something about Shawn?
I'd heard about Shawn. I had heard her music, but I'd heard of her from friends. And then I was playing a solo show, which I started doing almost as soon as I started making records and touring with the band. I realized I needed to do solo tours to sort of, you know, keep track of that skill set, because it's kind of where songs come from, and it's kind of how I'm going out and playing songs in between the tours is how I figured out whether the songs were any good or not. And I was playing at the Iron Horse in Northampton, Massachusetts, and Shawn was on the bill, and
I was opening for him.
I was really, I realized what I was singing is I was singing a real live folk singer, somebody that could go up there with one guitar and hold down an audience, and which is, it's what I am. And you know, I sort of kept track of her from that point on. And then someday, you know, I went through, not very long later, you know, it took me a long time to get a record deal, and then within a very short period of time, I made 3 records right in a row, and then I made a 4th record, and then a year later I was homeless. And it was because of a drug habit, and I got in this really dark place, and one of the few little tiny points of light was hearing that Emmy Lou Harris had recorded Guitar Town and Shawn had recorded Someday. And it just sort of made me feel like maybe that, you know, I had some sort of worth in the world. It was anyway at a point when I didn't, it was hard to believe that. And, you know, it might have been started my first kind of steps back, was that little point of light.
Which was an amazing thing for me to learn that, because I didn't deviate all that much from Steve's version of Someday when I did it on a cover record that I made. And I thought just the essence of maybe a woman singing it would add something. And I identified with it so much because I come from this tiny little town in South Dakota. But it's, you know, you do somebody else's song that you admire, and you're always worried, you know, if what they're gonna think of it. And I met Steve again not long after I made that record, and I was terrified to see him and talk to him. And he actually sat in with me, and we sang the song together, and it was lovely.
You know, I mean, that's so funny about the anxiety about meeting the songwriter. Meanwhile, the songwriter is feeling, you saved my life. You know, that, you know, that's quite extraordinary. You know, can you talk then about working together? You know, obviously, you know, as we know, you know, it's like putting together a sports team or something. You know, you can have a lot of all-stars on the field, but, you know, can they play together as a team? And can you talk about how you guys work together writing the songs for this record? You know, did you feel was it just an easy flow, or did you getting in each other's way at points, or how did that process work?
It was an easy flow writing the songs.
Artistically, it's easy.
It was easy.
Yeah.
Really surprisingly so, because I'm a reluctant writer in general and a very shy co-writer, and Steve doesn't really co-write, doesn't need to. And so I was anxious. And, but we just cut right to it. Steve's a very fast writer, very intuitive. And once I ponied up to the first song and wrote some lines he liked, I was like, okay, I'm going to be all right. He didn't shoot me down.
The record exists because of the way we sing together. So that part of it, we did a tour that was Shawn's idea that was essentially, we'd come out together, sing one song together, then I'd sing a song, she'd sing a song, I'd sing a song, she'd sing a song, and we'd end up kind of the second half of it singing together for a lot of it. But the epiphany was that our voices do something together. And I wanted, as a writer, to write for that group, for that sound. And so I came up with the idea, we need to make a record. And I think she thought I was crazy. But
only because it's a great idea. You think of it with some people that you know, and getting two artists that have solo careers together to make a record, much less write songs for one, I was a little dubious about, but we made it work.
Yeah, I'm kind of hard-headed about that sort of thing.
Can you, when you talk about like writing for that, for the two of your voices, talk about just that. Like, what is, what's the difference?
It's we wrote songs. You only hear our voices separately one time on the entire record, and so we were writing songs that were built for harmonies. And I was writing kind of. When we started this project, I was finishing songs for the blues record that I released last year, and I was starting songs for what is essentially, I call it a country record for lack of anything else to call it. It's just, so those are specific type of projects, and I could set those things aside, and anything that sounded like something two people could sing together, any musical idea I had, that went into this pile, and when we got together to write, we worked on that. So it's just about the stuff that's built for harmony, that's built for us to sing together all the time.
Kind of, yeah, it had to be that way. It had to be that the songs were built for it, both musically and lyrically, for us to sing them together all the way through, sort of differentiating us from maybe another kind of duo record where they trade verses, and then you sing on the choruses.
Yeah, it was about Crosby, Stills, and Nash, not George and Tammy. It's a group. It's not really. These aren't really duets. There's one duet on the record, and the rest of it is a group that sings in harmony.
But what worked really great, and I guess we kind of knew this from the little tour that we did, but people wonder if we, how did you work out the parts and assign, how did you make this happen? And you know what? We didn't work at it. We grabbed our parts as we went, and it was this natural.
It's cross harmony. It's what the Everlys do and what the Livens did and what the Delmers did, but
there was no
talking about it. Yeah, there was no musicology involved. It was like we sing together and we naturally switch parts, and I think they do too. I think all those groups, do, and so it is. Like the sibling harmony thing, it's a very natural thing for us to sing together. And I've never been able to really sing like that with anybody. I consider myself to be the worst harmony singer on the planet until this project.
You're not, yeah.
Hey, Shawn, you were saying backstage about how quickly the process went. That you recorded it, very fast in like a week and a half or something. Could you talk about that? Just what's the difference between obviously we know great records, some of them have taken a long time, some of them get done pretty quickly. What's the difference? What makes one work in one instance, not work?
Well, anymore, and I don't know if Steve will agree with me, but money makes a difference. I mean,
money changes everything.
The business has changed, and the quicker you make them, the better off you are. But that's not why we did it.
No, but money is a great aesthetic, actually.
Because we can.
We had songs.
We had the songs, and if you can sit down and sing and play, it's not rocket science. That's my overview, and there were no tricks. We could sit down and sing and play the material, and we wanted it to be raw. And,
Yeah, we wanted to be a lot of space in it. We wanted to be able to go out and perform it, just
By
the two of
ourselves,
us, even though we recorded with the band to make it interesting for a record. But so we wanted there to be a lot of holes in it, so that it just wasn't something that was dependent on an arrangement that were people that were not going to be on the tour, because we wanted to do it this way. We could busk with this. We could go down in the subway and get paid. Wow.
what'd you eat?
That was.
It's like growling. Unfortunately, that crazy noise stepped on your funny line about going down into the subway and busking. I think that. What about I mean, you briefly mentioned. Thanks for playing Ruby Tuesday, by the way. And you mentioned that it was a kind of fantasy camp idea. Could you talk about like just that process of like knocking around songs that you wanted to play, by other people, and maybe some of the ones that you decided not to do, and obviously you did 4, and I think they're on the on the special deluxe version. There's a couple of others, and
Well, it started on the tour that we did together, the initial tour. And we opened with Wake Up Little Susie, and we did record it. We released it as a Record Store Day single. That's the only place it's available at this point. It's Record Store Day is important to me. There's a National Record Store Day, and it's basically to sort of celebrate mom and pop record stores that sell a place you can actually go in and buy a record, and where you can buy vinyl. And I've had a special release for Record Store Day almost, I think every year but the first year, since it's existed, about 6 or 7 years now. And so I wanted to do something for that, so we held that out for that. Babies in Black we were doing on the original tour and the encores, which is, that's the Beatles. I think Babies in Black is the Beatles imitating, the Luvins and the Delmores. And it sounds more like the Delmores than it does the Luvins in a lot of ways. It's got this real edge to it. It's a pretty dark song when it gets right down to it. It's the beginning of those John Lennon songs that are sort of, people
Comically.
die in them.
self-lacerating.
Yeah, people die in them, and that was something that the Beatles got country records where they were in Liverpool that maybe people in London didn't get. So
There wasn't a lot of discussion about, and we didn't knock around a lot of covers. I brought a couple in, he brought a couple in. We didn't really talk about it. We were like, yes, those are good. We learned them. That was that. I brought in Tobacco Road and an Emmylou Harris song, Raise the Dead. And Steve brought in Ruby Tuesday.
You Were on My Mind.
You Were on My mind, yeah.
Sort of going back to Ian and Sylvia with
the original version, which is it was written. I found out later. I was doing an interview, and a journalist told me this. I actually, and usually I know my shit when it comes to this stuff, but I thought that was an Ian Tyson song, and it's a Sylvia Fricker song, and it was written. Ian had written 4 Strong Winds. They were making that record, and Sylvia, not to be outdone, went back to the hotel, and they were staying in the Earle Hotel, E-A-R-L-E, which is now the Washington Square Hotel, which is like, right there 2 blocks from where I live now. And she wrote You Were on My Mind in the Earle Hotel, and ended up on the same record. And we did restore Sylvia's original second verse, which is not in the We 5 version, which was the hit version most people know, by a band from Southern California called the We 5. It's a great record. But they put all the minor chords and all that stuff in it. Ian and Sylvia version is like Ian playing 12-string guitar, trying to be lead belly, and it's just 3 chords, and it's pretty straight ahead, kind of a blues song. And it's like we restored her second verse. I got drunk and I got sick, and that was all very neatly taken out of the We 5 version. Evidently they didn't want people getting drunk and sick on AM radio in 1967 or 66 or 67.
Yeah. Obviously we're in a highly political season, and you guys have been out on the road a little bit, and everyone's been talking about what the sense of the state of the union is to one degree or another. And I wonder, in your travels of late, if you feel like there's anything that has changed or worsened or improved, or you know, what your picture of that is.
I'll defer.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's scary.
There's
It's a little
certain
scary out there.
inevitability
We
to
just
this, I
came
think.
back from London. We went over the week the record came out. You know, with the night the record came out, we played the City Winery here in New York. The next morning we got up and we flew to London, and we'd done a bunch of press here, and we did the same thing. Did the European press and played 2 nights at Union Chapel in London. And they were just on the verge of leaving the European Union, and everybody was talking about it. And there was this outcome that nobody expected was almost as soon as we got back. And I found that a little frightening because, you know, I find myself praying for an outcome that nobody expected, you know, not to happen with all my might. And this is, you know, I'm pretty political, and I did find myself able to support a political candidate with all my heart for the first time in a major presidential campaign, and I supported Bernie Sanders until yesterday when he officially got out of the race, and when he got, you know, that was the most democratic thing that I've seen happen in this particular election cycle is the Bernie Sanders campaign, and the effect that the Sanders campaign had on the Democratic platform. The Republican National Convention is going to be reality television on a
Steroids.
yeah. It's going to be and that they asked for it, they got it, you know. And if you don't, the state that we're in politically right now is, to me, it proves 2 things. That if you don't believe that this can't happen unless you believe first that Fox is news and that reality television's real. And, you know, those 2 things simply aren't true, but people do believe it. And it's a drag. It's not because they're stupid, it's because it keeps getting put out there as the truth. I have a little boy with autism, and you know, there's this idea out there that autism is caused by vaccinations, and it's not true, and it's never been true. The doctor that came up with that idea lost his medical license for insisting on, for basically falsifying papers because he was in publish or perish mode, and it's been proven that it isn't true. But in the age of the internet, when something's out there,
It never goes away.
it's true to somebody, and it can be true to a lot of people, and it becomes this. We're seeing, you know, like you say, like Kennedy, you know, that election with Kennedy and Nixon, you saw the effect of television for the first time. The chickens are coming to roost as far as the effect of the internet on politics, I think, you know, to a great degree, and the effect of reality television on fucking everything, you know.
Do times like these make it easier to write, harder to write, more important to write, to perform? You know, do you feel like there's a particular function that an artist has in the context like this, or?
I don't know. It's honestly, it's always hard for me to write, and the times don't make a difference. It's just hard for me. I don't think it is for him.
Yeah, I write about whatever is going on. I write, you know, I made a blues record at a point in my life when it was a really good time for me to write a blues record. And that's just luck. You know, moving to New York was so, as you get older, it gets harder to write. And I know people that have gotten older and stopped writing. And I live in terror of that. I don't know. I don't know. And I'm not proud of this. I don't know how I would justify my existence, you know, the space that I take up on the planet if I didn't write songs. It does define me to myself. And you know, I'm not sure that's okay, but it is still, at this point, still it is.
It does
Very
get
much true.
harder to write. I agree when you get older, and I don't know. The drama has gotten so old, you know, and I find that what I have to do is almost trick myself and sing nonsense over some chord structures, and deep stuff happens, and I realize what I'm writing about. But if I try to pin it down, like you have a kid, well, be careful, you know. You don't want to go, I'm going to write. You just, you know, you can, but of course I wrote about it, but I had to,
I had to get really real and not just go, I'm going to write a pretty lullaby. And, you know, I mean, I wrote a song about Martin Luther King. That's not what I do. But the only reason it came out was because I unconsciously kind of let some words come out of my mouth, and I realized a PBS program that I'd seen the night before was starting to inform those words.
Have you ever noticed that there are no specials about Martin Luther King on Fox?
Just a thought. Just a thought.
Just thought I'd throw it out.
That idea of you know, how it is that you write. I mean, does the music that you listen to, you know, provide inspiration, or you know, there are people obviously when they write, you know, don't, you know, they kind of shut themselves off from, you know, certain things other than anything that might be materially relevant to what they're doing. You know, other people obviously don't care. I mean, do you need, you know, there's the kind of stuff that's around you that you would listen to make a difference one way or the other?
I don't think I go directly for one sound, this sound or that sound, but I constantly listen. I do, because I steal. I'm fine with stealing something. You know, if something's going over and over in my head, I have no problem basing a song off. I did that with one of his songs. I completely rewrote lyrics like they needed to be rewritten to one of his songs. I was eventually able to take the lyrics and make it my own, but I need that input and that inspiration. I don't pick it, but I keep listening.
I go through periods where I don't listen to any music at all, and some of it's because I'm actually trying to, I've been struggling with writing a book for a long time now, and it's getting written, but it's kind of a war. And when I'm writing that stuff, when I'm writing prose or a play or something besides songs, I can't really listen to anything with lyrics. So if I listen to music at all, I listen to jazz and instrumental bluegrass, you know, when I'm doing that kind of stuff. But most of the time, I've kind of learned to sit and not listen to anything but just what's going on around me. And I don't, it's what I overhear. It's you know, and it's things people that are, you know, that I'm talking to say. You know, Shawn took something I said in a conversation when we were working on the very first song that we wrote for this record, and it was like I was talking about something historical, and I used the phrase, you know, in between the wars. You know, people say that referring to the years between World War I and World War II. And it's in come what may, but it was used in terms of a contentious relationship, you know. And
I was scared to write lyrics in front of him, and I thought, well, I'll just write down what he says, and he can't.
It was the first line. I think it's the first line that got written.
It's in the, yeah, I think it might have
The
been.
very first line.
The sense of, you know, responding to, you know, the world around you and trying to, you know, I mean, there's obviously a sort of dynamic, you know, to that. You know, each of you, you know, has written songs that, you know, obviously they've had their own effect on, you know, certainly your audience and often, and at least in some instances beyond that. You know, can you talk about that? Is there something that you know, do you think about impact when you're writing? You know, do you think about like how this would affect someone, or what you would imagine as a kind of ideal impact on a listener?
I do sometimes. Sometimes I just write to write. Most of what I write, I just write because it's the only thing I can write that day. But I've written songs. I wrote a song called Mississippi It's Time simply because there was one state left in the United States that still flew part of the Confederate battle jack as part of its flag, and it pissed me off, and I was just sick of it and embarrassed me as a Southerner, and so I wrote that song for that specific reason. The only time I ever, you know, we said we could make this record quickly because we had songs. I made another record quickly because I had to, because of budgets, called The Revolution Starts Now. And that one was me calling Danny Goldberg, who was, you know, who owned Artemis Records. He's my manager now and my best friend, but he just, you know, I said, when would I have to turn a record in to get it in before the election to have for people to hear it during? This was the second time that Bush was running, and he gave me a date, and I started. I had a couple of songs, and we booked time, and we went in the studio, and I came in with 3 songs. I think I had F to CC and The Revolution Starts Now itself, and maybe Rich Man's War. And on the 4th day, the way we recorded it, because we had a little time, we cut the track, did whatever overdubs we were going to do, and mixed the track that day. Worked straight through till we finished each track. On the 4th day, I woke up, the band sitting in the studio waiting for me, and it was Blonde on Blonde. I woke up to a blank sheet of paper, and I started at my house out in Williamson County. I was still in Tennessee then, and I wrote a song, and when I got close, I'd call Ray Kennedy and tell him to find all the guys, because some of them be in the swimming pool, some of them will split, and to get them in the studio. And it was a 45-minute drive out there, and by the time I finished and drove out there, Ray could round everybody up, and we recorded a song that did not exist that morning every day for 7 days. And I do not fucking recommend it as a process. It was nerve-wracking, and I didn't think I was going to pull it off. But I'm really, really proud of the record. Now I still play songs from it all the time. And The Revolution Starts Now was played at a lot of Bernie Sanders rallies over the last couple of years, and I'm very proud of that.
Shawn, Sunday Came Home is a song that, like a lot of people obviously, made a big, big impact on them. And, can you talk about that and that experience and having, sort of reaching that many people?
Well, there's just not a thing wrong with it. It was a fun ride. I'm not a hit artist. Never expected to be, still don't expect to be. And it was just a perfect storm of a good song, Lilith Fair consciousness, and
you wrote the fucking Lilith anthem. It was like it's a really, really important song, and right at exactly the right moment in history. So,
I was just telling my daughter the other day. She didn't. Of course, here's where I go, but she didn't realize this. I did a Disney special in Orlando with NSYNC. And you can YouTube this, and it was a Christmas special, and we were doing a song, the Donny Hathaway song, This Christmas, and everybody's jumping up and down and grooving, and I'm like, oh, and I had just had Callie, and sorry, I'm going to be indelicate, and your pelvic floor stretches out, and you don't want to jump up and down if you just had a baby. And I wet myself, and I thought, I'm old. I have no business being here with NSYNC. So crazy stuff like that happened, and of course the old dirty bastard story. I mean, it's just crazy. And
I'm not sure we do. Do we?
Oh, come on. Yeah, you do.
We do not.
Tell
do we know it?
Story. Come on.
Oh, okay. This is winning the Grammy Award winning the Grammy Award for Best Song is probably one of my proudest achievements, because I do not come to songwriting easily. So to win a Songwriters Award was a big deal. And I'm really proud of that song. I still play it, don't get sick of it. I dig it. So I don't know if it was the Songwriting Award or the Record of the Year Award, but we went to pick up the Grammy. Our names were announced, John Leventhal and I. And Old Dirty Bastard comes and takes over the podium before we have a chance to even receive the award.
This is like pre-Kanye and Taylor Swift.
It was I was
set
the
the
first.
template for this, yeah.
We did. And he was apparently, we were behind the mic, so we couldn't really understand what he was saying, but he was... And
Cough syrup kicked in.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, and we assumed John was like, appropriately offended, and of course my response was, did I do something wrong? I mean, he was apparently upset that...
Certainly, Mr. Old Dirty Bastard.
Yeah, he was apparently upset that that Wu-Tang Clan hadn't won something earlier in the night, and he just chose that moment to come and ambush the stage.
Cough syrup kicked in.
The cough syrup kicked in. Okay, great. So, eventually it was sorted out, and we got to make our speech. But I got a fax and a bouquet from Old Dirty Bastard.
R.I.P.
crazy things happen, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, on this subject, Steve, you mentioned you're working on a book and you've written books, and you've published a memoir. I wonder if you can talk about the sort of difference between these kinds of writing, just writing songs and this other, whether you're writing a novel or I'm not sure the project you're working on right now.
It's a memoir, but it's like it's a literary memoir. It's like, I mean, I'm kind of I'm not going after Keith. I'm going after Bob and Patty. I'm trying to write. It's largely about recovery. It's not about my whole life, or it's about certain people and certain things that happen in my life, and it sort of ends up being about the most important thing in my life, which is the fact that I'm. Then the reason I'm not dead is that I'm a recovering addict, and but it's hard. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. The novel was hard. It took years for me to write, and because it's still way. For one thing, I type like a badly injured sports writer. I just like this, and it takes me forever. Just the physical part of it is physically grueling for me. I end up at the end of the day when I've been working on a book all day long. Songs are kind of instant gratification compared to writing in a long form anything. So just for us especially, it's also harder when you've trained yourself from the time you were a teenager to tell pretty elaborate stories in 3 or 4 minutes, to try to slow that down and pay attention to detail and save something so that the narrative is longer and takes longer. It's against my nature.
And not only is it condensed to 3 or 4 minutes, but you've got this nice little template of a rhyme scheme, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You've got to make, you're confined to having to do this to make this work in a very short period of time. So it's very different.
You also have music.
Yeah, no, that's the
rhythm.
thing. Gregory Corso used to get really pissed off when people called Bob Dylan a poet, and it doesn't mean that Bob Dylan didn't write poetry. He did, but I do agree with him. A poet, deciding you're going to be a poet is an incredibly hardcore decision to make. Deciding to be a poet is like being a bluegrass musician or a jazz musician. It's deciding that you're going to practice this incredibly difficult discipline that you're going to take forever to become proficient at and never master, and there's no fucking way you're ever going to make any money. And it's and songwriters, at least in the era that we came up, could make a lot of money. That's changing a little bit. Being a singer-songwriter is not necessarily as lucrative as it used to be. I don't know what to tell Justin when he started making records. He's functioning as a different.
This would be Steve's son, Justin Towns Earle.
My oldest, who does the same job I do, but I don't know what to tell him about the music business, because he's functioned all along in a music business that's changed radically. I came from a music business where it was like, whoever dies with the highest unrecouped figure wins. It was like there's a lot of money out there, and some of it was misappropriated to make art. And
what about writing your memoir? Did you, was that a different sort of thing, and was it easier, harder?
Than writing songs?
Yeah.
It's way harder, way harder. I didn't want to do it. It was a dare. And, I thought,
like, who made the dare?
Oh, my manager.
I see.
He said, well, I think you have a story to tell. And I said, I don't, I think we all have a story to tell. That doesn't mean I should put mine in writing. And he gave me great advice. He said, start with a chapter. And I did. And my biggest concern was that I find my voice. We've all read memoirs that are very dry and do kind of like, the chronology is right there in place, and it's very dry. And my kind of mentor for this, or the person I wanted to emulate, and I say this with all humility because it can't be done, is the monologuist Spalding Gray, the late Spalding Gray, because he told wretchedly honest things about himself infused with humor and humility, and it just, it's a wonderful thing, and it made him so lovable, and it made the stories so relatable. And I wanted to tell some tough stuff, but incorporate, you know,
Certain degree of levity.
a certain degree of levity and some contrast. Yeah. So once I found my voice, I felt that I did. The next chapters were easier to do.
You know, Steve, in terms of that process, would you say it's equally gratifying? You know, I mean, obviously, one of the great things about writing is finishing. You know, and
Norman Mailer says, "I hate writing, but I like having it written, but I hate writing."
you know, at the end of you know, you published a collection of stories at the end of your novel. You know, did you have that same kind of sense, or a greater sense of achievement? You know, like is there a way of kind of measuring how that felt to you?
I was really proud when I finished my last book. When I realized I'd actually had written the last sentence, which was, you know, on Washington Place, you know, my old apartment. I was kind of in shock. I couldn't believe it, and I read it again, and I went back. I thought, no, wait a minute. I must have passed out or zoned out or something. I can't really actually be there, because I've been working on it for a long time, and I didn't know how my book was going to end until about a month before I finished it. You know, I just looked up one day. I had these characters, and it started out to be this sort of simple idea, simple ghost story, and it turned into a Harry Potter book for adults. It was like all these weird characters, and then one day my like transsexual ex-football player like killed my priest, and I was like, you know, where is this going? How's this going to end? And it got kind of interesting at the end, and I just sort of forged ahead and did it. And the last month or so kind of went really fast, and I just looked up all of a sudden and it was done. Right now, I can't see the end of the book that I'm working on, even though it's worse because it's my life and I know how it ends, and I have to. and it's like, or at least the part of it I'm talking about, and you get sick of yourself. You know, it's like I'm always writing about me, but when you're literally writing about you, I find my character, you know, just really uninteresting on some days, and it's really hard to face it. And I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah, writing a biography is like that. I have to say, unfortunately. Here's some questions from the audience. This one specifically is asked of you, Shawn, but I'd love for Steve to respond as well. It said, which cover version of one of your songs is your favorite, or what are a few that you like?
I haven't had that many people cover my songs, but I always thought someone should cover. It was like the first song I wrote called, and I discounted it when I wrote it because it couldn't have been real because I wrote it. And it was called I Don't Know Why, and it was on my second record. And it's a nice lullaby, you know. And Alison Krauss did a completely sped up bluegrass version of I Don't Know Why, and it was killer. I loved it. Yeah.
Well, Shawn's version of Someday is
Well,
pretty
yeah.
special, and Emmy's version of Guitar Town. Those are, and Emmy's version of Goodbye is probably my favorite. I played on it too. It was my 40th birthday. Emmy had come over to sing on a couple of things on Train to Come In on my record, and she heard Goodbye, and she decided she was going to record it. And Daniel Lanois produced that record, and his idea was he'd get the writers in to play on the songs that they wrote, and I ended up playing on about half the record. Lucinda came in and played on Sweet Old World. I played on Sweet Old World as well. I played on Every Grain of Sand, but the David Only song, which I also played on, and Goodbye were both cut on my 40th birthday, and so that one's pretty special.
This is a similar question. I'm sure that there are many, but I wonder maybe if you could, pick one. It just says, is there a song by another artist that you wish you'd written yourself?
Yeah. Wichita Lineman.
Yeah.
It's a pretty great one.
Talk about that song a little bit. You know, could you say what you like about it?
It's almost impossible to say. The chord structure is way over my head. But it's not, it's completely an emotional response to that. You know, it's not simple, but it's completely accessible.
It's really lonesome.
It's very lonesome, and the production of that song is, talk about, you know, lonesome. I mean, the whining of the strings and the dum 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 dum. You know, you got, and the story. I mean, who writes a story like that? Who writes a story about the Wichita lineman and infuses it with that much heart and you know, simplicity of sentiment? You know, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, it's so beautifully cinematic.
Yes.
I was once on a TV show, and this reporter was talking to me, like sort of during the break or whatever, and you know, she was saying, "Oh, you know, I'm really interested in music," and I said, "Great," you know, and I'm just in my own head, and she's going, "Oh, you know, as a matter of fact, my husband's a songwriter." I said, "You know, okay, great, you know, like, and you know, just really, and you know," and she goes, "Yeah, you know, I mean, you might have heard of him," and I said, "Oh yeah, who's that?" She goes, "Jimmy Webb."
Oh.
I said, "Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
I've heard him.
Absolutely." You know, and Wichita Lineman is a beautiful example of how great his writing is.
What do you wish you had written?
Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. It's just such a, you know, and you know, I could say, there's Beatles songs I could say, there's lots of Beatles songs I wish I wrote. There's lots of Hank Cochran songs that I wish I'd written. It was, but lately, you know, Bob Dylan invented my job, and there's that moment when Hard Rain, I think, is the moment at which everybody else knew, because, you know, in the Dave Van Ronk book, you know, he talks about it. And I've talked to, you know, like, there's Tom Paxton and David Blue and other people started writing songs around the same time Bob did. He was just better than everybody else. And he, you know, they all were writing songs in this folk style, but beginning to, you know, write their own lyrics. And not just, and some of them were coming with more original, you know, melodies. And that developed a little slower for Bob than it did for everybody else. But Hard Rain, though, lyrically, you know, it's, you know, everybody in the neighborhood that I live in now, and I've talked to several people that were there, you know, New Earth. I've talked to, you know, I knew Van Ronk a little bit before he passed away, and it's all, they knew that was the moment. It's like, oh, shit, everything's changing. It's all changing right now.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, everyone thinks about those songs, and rightly, as so topical, but, you know, there's such a kind of surrealism to those lyrics.
No, that song transcends being just a
protest
topical
song, yeah.
broadside song. That's what
I saw
the poetic,
white ladder all
the level of
covered
the
in
poet,
water, yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Bleeding hammers, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. That's game changing. So.
This is, I actually, as an interviewer, like to ask very simple questions, and as this person evidently does. How do you decide what to write about in a song?
How do you decide?
That's what it says.
Okay. Try not to.
You know, sometimes the songs decide that, you know, I'm going to write them, and sometimes I write projects. I write stuff for films, and I write stuff for television. You know, I wrote 3 or 4 songs, like a couple of the best songs I've ever written for Treme. And This City was written because David Simon came out to the set, and I was shooting a scene, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, and he pulled me aside, because the writers hide all day writing the next episode, and if they came out to the set, they came late. And he pulled me aside and said, "I need you to write something if you can." And he never asked me to do this before. It's the second episode I was in the first season. So I need you to write something that's going to be probably in the final episode of the year. It's a song that we're going to see your character write the song, and it's something he would have written right immediately following the storm. And I was on hold the next day, which means that you're not important enough cast member that they fly you home on the day that you're working. And I was sat in the hotel room and I wrote this song, and I put it down I recorded it on my phone, and I sent it to David, and I sent it to the music director, and I knew I had it. I knew I nailed it, and I called T-Bone. Burnett and I were getting ready to make a record anyway, and before anybody even had a chance to try to dictate to me how it was going to be recorded that was involved with the television show or HBO, I wanted to make sure it was on my record too. So I called T-Bone and I said, I'm sending you something. I sent him the song. And, so we already started conspiring to record it ourselves, and we had to fight for it a little bit. But David Simon's pretty smart, and T-Bone flew in to New Orleans right when we finished the season, and he came up with Alan Toussaint wrote the horn chart. That's the one time that I worked with him, and it was the greatest experience of recording a record of my life. And I think maybe my favorite single recording that I've ever made is that one song. And Toussaint, there's a moment that's like we played the song, and Alan had been sent a tape the same tape that I sent to David Simon the first night, and I said we listened, we went out and recorded it, and we listened to the playback, and Alan said, okay, that's really good, but the gentleman's changed his guitar part. It's become more sophisticated, so I need to tweak the chart a little bit. And T-Bone says, well, I kind of like the way that it just stays the same when the horns move against it, the tension it creates. And Alan says, oh my. Yeah, and he was Alan Toussaint, so we did it his way. So it was one of those.
Exactly. This is a sort of a two-part thing that actually oddly touches on something that we were having a brief conversation about before we started tonight. The first part is just one, Shawn, I love the song Polaroids. 2, what do you think of Beyonce?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, we were talking about Beyonce. I mean, who isn't, of course. I mean, we're just, yeah.
So okay. Two-part. There was first part was a comment, and the second part was a question.
Yeah,
Well,
you can comment on the comment.
okay. Well, thank you.
And then answer the question.
Is what I would say to the comment, and and I will say, I really like that song too a lot. Thank you. And what the little story I like to relay about that tune is that, and this, in terms of what happens with songwriting or what can happen, I didn't know the ending of the song, and I really had a great time writing Polaroids. It just kind of tripped along, and there was imagery that was coming in and out, and I could see the story happening, but I had no idea how I was going to end it. It's like a postcard song, and I dreamed it. I had a dream, and it was the perfect ending to the song, and all I had to really do was write down what happened in the dream, and it ended the song, so that was pretty cool. Beyonce's great.
It's a good thing. It's like the Bajancy would be out after you if you said anything else. Right. This is a. Well, I mean, this is actually a pretty deep question, also for you, Shawn. I was very moved by Shawn covering Steve's song and how that saved him. I was wondering how Shawn felt about that impact.
Wow. Well, I didn't really know about it, as I said.
When did I tell you that? Probably.
It wasn't really until we did our first gigs together.
No. It was almost. It was Cayamo that year. I think I told you the night. Remember when you snuck onto Cayamo that year? You weren't really officially there.
It's a music cruise.
And,
I stowed away.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think that was when I mentioned it the first time.
It was
which was just a few years ago.
Extremely moving, important, piece of information for me. I'm a recovering addict as well, and I had we all have the soundtracks to our lives, in the good times and the dark times. And, you know, you don't, unless someone tells you, you don't often know what, you know, the impact of what their songs mean to you. And to know that even though it was a cover, it wasn't my song, but it was a cover of his song, and to know, you just don't imagine. I just didn't imagine that Steve Earle was in a dark place and that was going to be a, you know, a beacon of light for him. And the impact is enormous, and it just goes to show you don't know.
Yeah, it's that sense of putting things out in the world that you think are good or might conceivably be helpful might actually turn out to do some good and really be helpful.
You don't know what they are.
In big ways,
Yeah.
you know. This is an interesting comment. I hadn't really thought about this. It's one of my favorite songs of yours, which is about the devil's right hand. And the song says, more applicable now than when written.
Well, when I wrote it, I had a whole trailer full of fucking guns. And I wrote it, you know, I was probably conflicted about it because I did grow up a hippie and grew up, you know, reading Gandhi and you know, Martin Luther King was a hero, and I understood nonviolence as a tactic, and I understood it as a practice, and I understood it as part of spiritual systems. But I still grew up in Texas hunting and fishing, and I had this part of me that sort of hung on to that. And I had a small arsenal at a couple of different times in my life, and a few gun charges on my record. And then I wrote The Devil's Right Hand in '77, I think. And I had, like I said, a lot of guns. And then, and people would say, oh, it's a gun control song. And I would argue with them because I didn't, said, well, but I guess I must have thought, I was conflicted about the fact that I was kind of armed to the teeth part of the time. And then my 14-year-old son, he's now 35, Justin, when I got out of jail and started, got clean for a while, for some reason, a lot of people decided that I was cured and could take anything. And one of them was my ex-wife, who handed me a completely out of control teenage boy and said, here. And the first thing he did when he got in my house is he went into my bedroom when I was gone, and he found the 14-shot 9mm pistol that I kept hidden under my mattress. And he hid it, and he wouldn't tell me, where it was, or even admit that he had it. And I knew he had it. I knew he was lying. I still know when he's lying. And I just didn't know what else to do. So I called my brother, and we strip searched him, made sure he didn't have the gun. All I could come up with was make sure he was where the gun wasn't. And we loaded him up, and we took him to a wilderness camp in Hickman County, Tennessee. It was January. It was cold outside. And we wrote him a check, and we dropped him off. And it was January, and it was cold. And so about 4:30 the next morning, he called and told me where the fucking gun was. And I haven't had a gun in my house since. Because, the truth is, it made me think about every aspect of it. The truth is, most of us, if we had a gun and somebody broke into our house, we're not going to pull the trigger anyway. And we're supposed to fucking be that way. We're supposed to be incapable of pushing that button. And so, most of the people that have guns for self-defense end up getting them turned on themselves. They push.
And even people who are, it's pretty hard to shoot accurately.
It's really hard to hit anybody, and it's, and I had the worst thing that could possibly happen almost happen. He had the gun. I'd never shown him how to shoot it. I didn't keep guns. I kept guns loaded with a round in the chamber, or not at all, and because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. And it completely changed everything I think about it. And now I sing that song. It's a fucking gun control song.
No.
I got your water. I'm sorry.
Thank you for that question, whoever asked it, and that amazing response. Were there some things that you disagreed on musically?
Yes.
There's only one thing, right?
There was only one thing. I don't know if it was a musical. I guess it was. You want to tell?
We had a song finished, and we decided that we were getting ready to record it. And Shawn had this dream or epiphany or something in the night and decided it needed a bridge. And not only did I think the song was finished, but I was going through this weird thing where I thought bridges were bullshit, you know? and so I got...
That part in Sweet Jane, God, that just sucks.
I reared up on my hind legs. Yeah, we went after it, and, you know, we argued about it for about 5 minutes, and then we recorded the way that we recorded it. And we both decided that when we heard it back, we decided it was okay. And then the next song I wrote had a bridge. So, so there you go.
This is an interesting question. I mean, I haven't read this story, although, I mean, this is New York, and having opinions about things you haven't read is, of course, part of living here. An important part of, an essential part of living here.
That do that for a living.
Yeah, exactly. Article in today's New York Times about This Land Is Your Land and We Shall Overcome. Your thoughts on should these songs be in the public domain? Have you read this piece? Did you read it?
I didn't read it.
Is there anything?
Should they be in the public domain? What's the argument that they should? I wonder.
I don't know.
Everybody can use it, and otherwise they are protected from using it, like protecting it from Trump or other people using this.
Right. Well, We Shall Overcome, you know, was a spiritual that it was sort of wrestled into its current form by Pete Seeger. And Bob Dylan copyrighted a lot of things that were traditional material, and Led Zeppelin definitely did it too. I teach this in my songwriting course. The rules change because most of the good traditional material is taken, and other people that didn't write it have already copyrighted, so you can't do that. So, and these people that didn't even write this stuff that hold the copyrights will fucking sue you. So it's, you know, so the rules change all the time. Should they be in the public domain? Writers that genuinely wrote something should get paid for it. And, you know, the thing is, if you want to sing We Shall Overcome, you can fucking sing it, you know? And it's kind of always been that way. I've heard it sung a lot of places, and I owe somebody a lot of money. I guess I owe Pete some money. But I've sung it a lot and not paid anybody for it. So it's kind of almost a non-issue to me. They sort of are in the public domain. Those two songs are so important that they kind of are, no matter what.
Well, you know, I wonder if you guys would be up for playing a couple of more songs.
We can do that. Let's get, this thing here, I just had to take it off for a while because they really are a nuisance. And I've heard these things were invented by blind street musicians in New Orleans, which makes sense to me because blind people don't know how stupid they look with one of these things around their neck. What am I calling you? This is my favorite thing I own, this particular mandolin. Cool. So, this is the second song Shawn and I wrote. You got this out there, Brian? Okay. And it was always going to be Tell Moses. I had a mandolin riff, and I sort of, I don't know. I went to Israel a couple of times in the last few years. I was invited there by David Broza to help him make a record, and which you should check out. There's the record's kind of being re-released. There's a record called East Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, and a film called East Jerusalem, West Jerusalem about us making that record. And that's why I went there. I finally saw this place that I'd written a song about, and
but it's walk around a place like Jerusalem and you start thinking in Old Testament terms. That's all, all there is to it. So we started working on this, and we surrendered to the first verse sort of being Exodus, and the second verse, Martin Luther King came back, and this is Shawn's verse for the most part. And then the third verse, we thought, we'll come up with another leader that's what it's about, but it sort of evolved into something else, which I think, you'll see, and you get to sing too.
Drowning down in Egypt, Pharaoh fit to fight, talking about the trouble with the Israelites. Now how am I supposed to build this monument of mine if I can't keep the monoliths moving down the line? Tell Moses, tell him go. Say the children of Israel suffering so. Tell Moses, tell him true. Gotta lead them where the Pharaoh won't be following you. Well, the water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Keep on traveling along. Selma, Alabama, 1965. Gotta stick together if you're gonna stay alive. Riot gear and tear gas, sheriff on the edge, waiting with an army over yonder across the bridge. Tell Martin, tell him go. Say the governor's in Montgomery and you gotta let him know. Tell Martin, tell him now. Say he's been up on the mountain and he's gotta show us how. Cause the water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Keep on traveling along. Here's your part. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the. Come on. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water. Singer, everybody will think you're Republicans. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Ferguson, Missouri, people in the streets, hands above their heads, standing up to the police, waiting on a hero, stepping to the breach. Ain't nobody coming, so it's up for you and me. Tell Mary, tell John, say the hourglass is empty and the judgment day has come. Tell preacher, Farmer Brown, say Joshua's blowing his trumpet and the walls are coming down. Tell sister, brother too, tell them where they're gonna meet us and what we're gonna do. Tell Stephen, tell Shawn, there's a message in the music, everybody sing along. Come on. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Water is wide, milk and honey on the other side. Keep on traveling along.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I know. Whew. We've got one more song planned for you here. This is a three-way co-write. Song was started by an amazing songwriter named Julie Miller. If you, oh, my wire's just like gone all hinky here. Yeah, whatever.
It's gone rogue.
Yeah, it's gone rogue on him. It's not attractive. Julie is Buddy Miller's wife. He produced our record, if you happen to know who Buddy Miller is. But Julie is a ridiculously amazing songwriter and singer. And she gave me this piece of music a while back, a couple verses actually. And I didn't know where to go with it next until, I don't know, a year or so later. My dad passed away, and I realized this song was the place I wanted to put that experience and some things that I felt about it, or some imagery that was very moving to me. And unbeknownst to me, Julie had written her part about her brother who had passed away. We didn't know that about each other's verses when we wrote them. At any rate, I brought it to Steve, and he liked it, and he wrote the choruses after that. So.
And the choruses are, I was writing about loss is pretty universal. It's one of those things there are a lot of songs about. But at the time, there was no recent loss in my life, but I've had that happen to me too. And but since then, we've been playing this song a lot, and we lost Guy Clark, who's one of the greatest songwriters that ever lived, and my teacher. And so I've been singing it for Guy a lot. So.
Every time the rain comes in, every time I hear the wind, I can hear your voice again, calling to my heart. Everybody looks like you. Every color turns to blue. No one knows what I've come to, alone here in the dark. When I close my eyes, the silence never lies. It's then I realize you're still gone. Sometimes I can sing a song, sometimes I know right from wrong. I can see where I belong, like sailboats on the lake. Dreamed you came back in the end to fix my leaky roof again. When I asked where you had been, I found myself away. And I'm still all alone, and it chills me to the bone. Keep going on, you're still gone. And I'll never be the same. There's no one I can blame, but I still call out your name, and you're still gone. Keeps spinning round, and my heart still makes that sound. I can hear you laughing now, but you're still gone. You're still gone. And I don't know what I'm waiting on. I depended on you for so long.
Shawn Colvin.
Steve Earle. Thank you so much.